Went to the library this morning, didn't.
Okay, everyone said.
And my printer is completely tied and back.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
In fact, I know I had him from Ellen for our health print. And I passed him out. The one thing that they put.
We're ready, yeah, Dan's gonna be late, and I think everybody else is here.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Desert Healthcare District Board Meeting, a special meeting of the board study session. For grant 1499. I'm trying to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we go ahead and get a roll call, please?
Director Smith,
Here.
Director Rogers,
Here.
Director Perez Hill,
Here.
Director Logston, Secretary Delara,
Here.
Vice President Rodriguez.
Here.
President Barraza.
Here. Thank you. Now, pledge of allegiance, we please rise. We are. So, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I got some.
Thank you. My ears a little closed, so let me know if I'm speaking a little like too soft or if you can hear me all right. I'm trying to gauge my volume right now. So next item, C, approval of the agenda.
So,
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alrighty. Let's go ahead and go to public comment. At this time, comments from the audience may be made on items not listed in the agenda that are of public interest and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district. The board has a policy of limiting speakers to no more than 3 minutes. The board cannot take action on items not listed in the agenda. Public input may be offered on agenda items when they come up for discussion and or action. Do we have any public comment?
No public comments online, me in person, no public comments.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Item E, continuation of Intercare Coachella Valley Teaching Health Center Program Study Session. Chris?
Thank you, President Barraza. So if we think back, we did have our first study session on this topic back in October, I believe it was. And so it was a continuation as we, at that time, did not get through all of the presentation by Germain Solutions, which is our consulting firm that we're working with on this. So there was a continuation, and we've done extensive work in the process in reviewing, researching, and refining a presentation that Germain has prepared for us today. So what we would like to do, last time we did question and answer as we were going along. I think what we prefer to do this session is to allow Germain to completely go through the presentation and then address questions at that point. So, and then we do have results of some comments and that was provided by Intercare based on the revised slideshow presentation that we have for you today. So if we could proceed that way, if there's any comments before we begin, otherwise we'll turn it over to Germain Solution and Samuel and Scott.
Board member, do you have any comments or questions before we hand it over? I do really briefly, are there any changes in the grant from the last time that was brought to?
No, so the grant that's in the package is the original grant application. So that's what's there for reviewing. But the work has been around, potential revisions, modifications. And so the anticipated result from this meeting would be the board to consider the recommendations and the discussion that will, take place with staff and Intercare and Germain, and I hope the result would be for the directors to come out of it with some direction, with working essentially the three together with the Intercare team, the staff and Germain Solutions to ultimately then revise a grant application that we would bring back to the later date. So that's the intended goal for this study session.
Thank you. Any questions? No? All right. Germain, Tom?
Hi, good afternoon. Is everybody able to hear me all right?
Yes.
Well, it's good to see you all again. I know we met last October during the first study session. My name's Sam Kern. I'm a consultant here at Germain Solutions, and joined with me is Scott Mason, director and my manager at Germain Solutions. I appreciate you all taking the time to gather around again to discuss this grant. I believe we got through a majority of the presentation last time. I will just briefly here share my slides and kind of recap what that discussion centered around. Um, Previously, and just as an overview, this was over whether or not the board moves forward with the final decision on the 3-year, $5.26 million grant that was requested from Intercare. There were really 5 main topic points from that previous meeting that we went over that I'll just remind the group of. First was the accreditation process for the family medicine residency program. This was around the potential application process and when it would be most feasible to start the program. And this led us into that second point, which was on the potential timelines for whether or not the program could start in 2026 or 2027 or maybe a year beyond that. Third, a review of the request to fund the salaries proposed in the family medicine programs. Fourth, a review of the proposed FTEs committed to the development and operation of the residency program. This would be the administrative time that leadership would need to properly function this program over the coming years. And then lastly, alternative funding sources that may help to also compensate this program in addition to what the Desert Healthcare District would be compensating. As an overview to what this original request looked like, so I just mentioned that this is a $5.26 million grant over the course of 3 years. The primary ask of the Desert Healthcare District is to fund the stipend and fringe benefits of a lot of the program leadership, some of the resident salaries for the programs, and then a 15% indirect rate. So you can see on this top line that total staffing expenses accounted for 4.5 million of that, and then the indirect rate here at the bottom accounted for just shy of 700,000. When you break that down in 3 years, the first year the request was $1 million. The second year just shy of that $1 million mark, and then the third year it really shoots up to that $3.2 million mark. This is just because of the large increase in the amount of residents you have in the program and the amount of funding that would go towards their stipend and fringe benefits. Also included in this request was just a little bit of transparency to the other funding sources that at the time had been secured or at least presumed to be secured for the program. This included supplementary funding from HRSA as well as the Roush Family Foundation. This was estimated at approximately $4.87 million. So that's just kind of an overview of the previous the previous grant that was submitted. I know that in the future, kind of a revised grant will need to be submitted. One of the main points we wanted to make from the previous conversation and moving forward is that really there's going to need to be an adjusted timeline for these programs. Originally, the programs, which if we remember, there were 2 programs being proposed in their original grant request, would need to be pushed back to at least the 2027 or 2028 start date. This is just because we have, and you can see on this table to the right, a varying amount of ACGME, or the Accrediting Council for Graduate Medical Education, review committees where they go over the applications and make a decision on whether or not they've received that initial accreditation. Due to delays in previous program director recruitment, receiving accreditation and recruiting residents by the dates for our 2027 start may seem difficult. If the August 7th agenda closing date is met, there may be a possibility for a shortened recruitment window, in which case they could do a shorter recruitment period and go to the match and potentially have to recruit some of the residents outside the match. I color coded this table. Some of these red boxes here are for the previous agendas and review committee dates that have since passed. The ACGME tends to do a pretty historical trend for when these review committees are scheduled. And so we can see that if the Intercare team submits an application, they could meet the agenda close date for that August 7th, 2026 timeline, and then get an accreditation decision late December, early November, and be able to make a potential 2027 or 2028 start. So at a minimum, we do propose to the board that Intercare will need to update the grant request to shift these timelines at the very least. And so that was all overview from our previous study session. For kind of the future of this grant, we had some recommendations to the structure for what that new grant request should look like. To start, we do believe that the grant request can be a little bit more standardized because the Desert Healthcare District, this is a very beneficial driver for primary care physician pipeline and should absolutely be supported by the district to help support the patient population in its jurisdiction. But we do recognize that there are variable timelines that are dependent upon some of those areas, such as program recruitment for the leadership, clinical site, and getting the commitments needed for the resident rotations, as well as the establishment of a resident-ready family medicine practice, as well as some of those ACGME application deadlines that I was talking about on the previous slide. So to allow some flexibility for any changes in this residency development plan, we do think that breaking down this grant into some more phased distributions with specified contingencies may allow some smoother funding mechanisms for both Intercare and the Desert Healthcare District. And with initial funding provided to support the planning and development of the program, and upon successful completions of those initial milestones, we do see that this would be a cause for subsequent support to be provided for when the residency moves into those operational years. So as a recommendation, we do believe that a separate grant request should be submitted for each individual residency program that is more in line with some of these more phased funding approaches for the startup years and then for the operational years. So what those two phases look like for the grant goals and expenditures to be reviewed on kind of this annual or kind of contingency basis timeline. This is to assess progress, accountability, and readiness for the next phase of implementation of this grant. Advancement to those subsequent years would be based on achievement of some of these defined milestones that I put on this slide. So for the first planning accreditation milestones, these are things that Intercare had already mentioned in their grant, and some of these they've already achieved. For example, they did achieve their sponsoring institution application. They've, I believe, already recruited a program director. And so there's only a few additions that we had to this, which was the review and approval of any final affiliation agreements for the program and the recruiting of the first class of resident physicians to start July 1st of the next academic year. That fourth point right there, the recruitment of the first class of resident physicians, is really the primary one here because that is telling the board that they're ready to move on. The program is ready to move into that operational phase and starting to fund some of those salary and fringe benefits of the rest of the residents when they're learning in their first postgraduate year. And then once we get to the program operations of the milestones, these weren't as explicitly stated in the request from Intercare, but we think these are important for moving between each year when the program is in operation. That just means that each year the program starts on July 1st, new resident class comes in, and then new funding would be provided for the resident stipend and fringe benefits as well as the faculty leadership. So these milestones include the successful recruitment of the new class of resident physicians for the next academic year. It would also require a report of other program funding applications such as HRSA, the CalMed Force, and the Song Brown Grant, or any other philanthropic funding that they're searching for. The other one would be the report of additional funding achieved to support the program. So not only the report of the funding that they're applying for, but for any additional funding that was actually achieved from any of those grant applications. And then additionally to that, what costs those funding pools are supposed to cover, because I think that there is kind of a room for any overlap between some of these funding pools and just making sure that each one is delegated to a specific piece of the expenditures of the program. And then lastly, just a reported detailed curriculum, rotation schedule, and any affiliation agreements of the program, just so that the healthcare district is aware of any impact that the resident training could have on its jurisdiction and patient population. So what this first year would look like, there's a multitude of work steps that go into this. Ultimately, the primary milestone that you're looking for is receiving an initial accreditation decision from the ACGME. I've highlighted a few dates in here that are kind of variable. That's the agenda close date, the agenda meeting date, kind of the match day for when the residents are matching into this program. But ultimately, the milestone that you're looking for this phase of the program or the grant is for the program to receive that initial accreditation. Grant support in these years would be primarily the fund leadership, such as the program director, the DIO, the core faculty, to go through program development, start creating relationships with the sites, and go through that resident recruitment phase. For funding in this initial development year, we're advising an amount of salary support that more is in line with time expected exclusively for that program development. In the original request, full salary support was requested for the program director, the faculty, the program coordinator, and a 0.75 FTE for the DIO. Since the program director and core faculty will not have any residents to train or evaluate or program to operate, protected time for the program is generally limited to the program application and the faculty development. The remaining time, especially for faculty, would be spent doing clinical work that would not fall underneath protected project salaries that would be for the administrative time of these faculties. With these suggestions in mind, we have revised the request from $882,000 down to $370,000. For the program operations years and the subsequent years when residents are in fact recruited and training in the program, ideally, Desert Healthcare District may commit up to the appropriate portion of salary and fringe benefits to cover leadership's protected administrative time that prevents them from being clinically active. So the ACGME, they have program requirements for every specialty or subspecialty that specifically lays out how much time they would anticipate leadership be pulled away from their clinically active time to work on the administrative parts of the program. So we've revised these requests more so to in line with those ACGME requirements. And so funded leadership time has been turned down in these years as well. And then for continuity between years 2 and 3, resident salaries have also been included for the inaugural classes of the PGY1s. And down here highlighted, these revised amounts in each year are $1.13 million and $1.8 million. To summarize these changes, in year 1, there's a significant drop in the requested funding just because we believe that the protected time needed to support the program development isn't as drastic as what was put into the original request. So there's about a $500,000 difference. But there is an increase in that second year because we're standardizing that resident salaries and fringe benefits would be covered, which was not originally included in the request by Intercare. And then lastly, in year 3, that's brought down from $2.8 million to $1.8 million, again, because we're standardizing the grant request. So this has been split out between 2 programs, and so it would be a lesser ask. The indirect funding rate has also not been adjusted, so that's still at 15% and is not represented in these tables as we've only adjusted the funding for the salaries and benefits. Overall, this grant request has been revised from $4.5 million for the salaries and fringe benefits down to $3.3 million, which is about a $1.26 million difference. Lastly, I just wanted to mention one other consideration here, which is the THC GME funding, which is the Teaching Health Center GME, Graduate Medical Education Funding Program. This is about $160,000 of reimbursement per FTE or per resident. And it's a program aimed at providing support to teaching health centers that are practicing these residency programs in rural or underserved communities. And this funding is really intended to provide both direct and indirect, but primarily that resident and stipend and fringe benefits. So we believe that if this funding mechanism is secured, it could potentially offset some of the funds needed from Desert Healthcare District during the operational years of the program. And what that looks like, there is a bit of a difference in that years 2 and 3 when the program is operational and has those resident stipend and fringe benefits. You can see in the revised salary table here where the resident salary used to show funding for the resident salary and fringe benefits, it has been since eliminated. So it's down to $573,000 in year 2 and $645,000 in year 3. And then I'll pass it over to Scott for some funding considerations.
Thanks, Sam. One of the items that we just wanted to discuss was the funding of the program within the Desert Healthcare District. So I think this is just more of an informational slide. This is not necessarily our recommendation, but I think it's just important to point out to the board. So for residency programs in general, Obviously, there's training that occurs in the inpatient setting, there's training that occurs in the outpatient setting, and there's also different subspecialty experiences that aren't very prevalent in a lot of different areas across the country. So when we're looking at building a program, obviously, if the healthcare district is funding it, we would prefer a vast majority of the experiences are happening within the healthcare district. With that being said, I'll just say inpatient pediatric experiences. That may be one that's very difficult to get, not only just finding the patient population to serve, but also finding physicians who are interested in teaching your residents in those specific areas. So we at least wanted to kind of pull out and see, okay, of the initial kind of schedule that was provided to us, we wanted to see what the percentage of training that was occurring within the Desert Healthcare District. So if you look, I'm just familiarize you all with the table. So when we look at the PGY 1, 2, and 3, there's 13 rotations or 13 4-week blocks that occur throughout the year. So you can see those in the respective years for 1, 2, and 3. You can see the identified sites. You can see the percent of time in the Desert Healthcare District. And then the last column is basically the FTEs. We do a little bit of math behind the scenes to show how many FTEs of the total 18 are training within the district. So if you go all the way down to the bottom right, it's 8.08 of the 18. The one important piece that I will call out here is if you look at all the acute care hospital rotations, those are kind of zeroed out at this point in time. I know that the Intercare is still kind of developing where those inpatient rotations will occur. But if you do include the acute care hospital, assuming that those would be in the district, it jumps to about 14 or 15 FTEs. So that inpatient experience is definitely a big driver to say where the residents are training and what proportion of the total of 18 are actually within the district. But we just wanted to call this out. There could be a potential mechanism where the healthcare district is funding the residents that are training within the district lines. But as I mentioned before, it's sometimes difficult to find the experiences that you need as long as a majority of them are occurring within the district. It could be a win-win for all parties involved. So. And this is just outlining the financials behind that. If we're looking at the specific, if we're looking at specific costs, and if we prorated and allocated those on the percentage of training that's occurring within the healthcare district, obviously the total overall dollars would decrease. As I mentioned before, it's not necessarily something that we're recommending, but at least is just something as a consideration for the board. And the last one that we'll mention here, and this will probably be a discussion after kind of open up for questions and things. So Eisenhower Medical Center, there's a lot of very specific funding mechanisms related to CMS. And if you're familiar with these at all, they're called funding caps. There's usually a funding cap that's developed over a 5-year time period. So if a hospital is non-teaching, they start training residents, they have a 5-year cap development period. And at the end of that period, if they have 5 residents, they have a cap of 5. Or if they have 50 residents, they have a cap of 50 for the lifetime of the hospital. So for a majority of larger hospitals, a lot of them have been teaching for a long time, and they've developed that cap. So they have a cap of 50, even if they're training 150 residents, they only receive funding for up to 50. For some of these hospitals specifically, and especially more recently, there's been an opportunity for these hospitals to reclassify, and they're actually able to build new IME cap, which you can see down below here is the vast majority of the funding for any newly accredited programs that are rotating at those hospitals. So we think this is something from the data that we have available on our side, everything that's available from CMS that we normally use to kind of make this interpretation is showing that they would be eligible to build cap. Obviously, that's something we don't know exactly who the inpatient partner is, but we would certainly recommend that this is something that's investigated because unlike some of the grant opportunities or other items like that, this isn't subject to a yearly approval. This is a funding source that is allowable in perpetuity, which is certainly something that helps increase the financial sustainability of the program. So We would just recommend that this is something that's investigated as a potential funding source for the program.
That assumes that Eisenhower will actually let you collect the Medicare money. Correct, and not require it for them to service residents?
For Eisenhower to receive this funding, they would have to incur the cost of the program. So if they were incurring the cost of the residents' salary and fringe benefits, they could be covering the cost of those and also kind of making sure that they could shift some of that back to Intercare as well to help with the operations of the program. So in kind of setting up these arrangements, we would have to have a conversation and say, you all know the reimbursement that you're receiving for these residents. This is the expected cost. What does this relationship look like? But these type of relationships are built very frequently.
Do we know how many residents are at Eisenhower?
I can tell you very shortly here. I do not know off the top of my head.
We were waiting for questions.
I missed that part, sorry, I screwed up.
Since we're close to the end of the presentation, should we do that and then?
Yeah, I believe we're,
Question.
yeah, I believe that is the end of the presentation. So unless we want to get into anything.
You don't get it.
All right,
They're currently training 125 residents today. Or claiming 125 residents.
What's their average GME reimbursement per resident?
It's what you see here on the slide.
thank you for that. I'll go ahead and get started. To my left, any questions, comments?
I'm trying to think, I don't know if my questions are okay. Okay, so as he stated, only 8% or whatever, 8 point, whatever is for district residents. And the other 10 of those points is for out of the district resident? Am I correct?
The way I saw was that if you take out the acute hospitals, because those haven't been identified yet, that's where the 8% comes from. But if you, once an acute care hospital is identified, it would go up to 14, correct?
Number of residents, not a percent, number of.
Number of residents, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's FT, okay.
Yeah, FTEs, yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Oh, wait. Okay, thank you. Carol, questions?
So I want to be clear. So Pam, the sites where the residents will practice, like FQHCs, clinics, and hospitals, will they be able to receive reimbursement for insurance, Medi-Cal, Medicare for services for the
Yep.
service of the residents?
So in general, yes, and I'll just talk through 2 examples really quickly. So when residents are training in a respective hospital, assuming that they can build funding cap, they would get funding for that time. And then any outpatient clinics or FQHCs that hospital is paying for the stipend and fringe benefits of those residents. So assuming we're going to have either a hospital or a grant pay for a majority of the resident salary and fringe benefits, they could go that route and get funding from the hospital. The only thing they would not be able to receive funding for is if, say, one hospital is claiming them and they send them to another partnering hospital for like a small amount of rotations, that may not be funded. Like the pediatrics experience or something like that, that small portion may not be funded. For the teaching health center graduate medical education funding, it's actually a little bit different, but you can actually claim all of the time of the residents depending upon the number of positions that you have funded through the grant opportunity. So if you got 18 slots of funding, you can actually claim the residents when they're in the hospital, and that a little bit is it's counterintuitive to some of the other rules for CMS funding, but this is a carve out to help direct funding to FQHCs to stand up programs like this.
So what you're saying is that the hospital could bill for get reimbursement for the residency program, but you also said something about a 50 cap of residents that would be eligible.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was using that 50 as an example. That was just an example for the discussion's sake. But I'll just use Eisenhower for this example. If they were to claim the residents, they would be able to develop 18 new additional funded positions, assuming that they can claim the entire program to help fund some of the program if they could work out a in intercare.
Okay,
Yeah, I have more questions, but let's move on.
Director Delara, any questions a moment?
This is a Jack question. Okay, so with Eisenhower being the hospital that's being considered here, is there any legal issues that we would be dealing with because of our lease agreement?
Well, I think and this gets a little bit, this whole thing is complicated. We would have to look at it, okay, to see if the 27, if it impacts that in such a way that it would be a violation of that. But it doesn't preclude us from sort of developing and going through these phases. And then once we get to that point, we can understand basically where, if there is a potential problem there, but it's really is fairly complicated. And I know, we discussed this, Colorado sent over a memo basically raising this issue. And so I think it just deserves some clarification as we go through here. But it certainly doesn't preclude us as because we're in agreement that we want to do this in phases, that we've got time to kind of look at these things, fairly and how it integrates with that. So I don't see that to be necessarily an obstacle, but it's complicated and we would need to have some cooperation. We want to make sure that we're not stubbing our toe on that issue.
I have a quick question, then in case you have any other follow-ups.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing from, especially our doctor.
So really quickly, when was this grant application submitted originally?
Oh my God, last spring?
Was it around,
April.
February 2025.
so it'll be almost a whole year and we still can't get a good answer, so.
Well, no,
But I know that we worked on it.
but in fairness, the whole schedule shifted. They had anticipated that they'd be getting this approved much earlier. And so now we're sort of, we're in a phasing situation.
And it isn't, in fairness to that too, Jermaine through the data request too, has not received all of the requests from Intercare related to that. And there's been some apprehension on disclosing, what that relationship with the acute care hospitals is about. So I think that's where, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, that it's kind of a part of this phase part of it is that we don't want to delay potential funding to get the program started because we still have to work with Intercare to define how that works in relationship to the lease and tenant, et cetera. And so there's requested information that could help clarify this, but that's going to need to be resolved over time so that we don't keep holding up this.
Could you briefly tell us what the list of the information that's needed,
Well, one of it's just what we're talking about here, the information related to the acute care hospitals. We don't have that specifically identified in any of the information that we received from Intercare, and it was actually specifically said that they prefer not to provide that information. So
Yeah, and I'll let Intercare speak for themselves, but there's a lot of things that we've been able to come to an agreement on and how we should structure this through the help of frankly, Intercare. And so I'm confident that we're gonna be able to work out something that's gonna be a great residency program for the district and Intercare. But, these are complicated issues that you gotta You know, I mean, there's nothing simple about this, and it does, you need to go through this process to get it.
I'm sure. I know that I had asked for an update on, I want to say the November 18th meeting, and the update was pretty brief, and so I think we've known that there's information that's been withheld for whatever reason, and I think I'd like to know also, right, like what that information is, and I think that the board should also know, right, like what are we expecting or what are we waiting, not waiting on, but like also what information is being withheld. And if there's a reason for that. Do you mention that you have a follow-up question or?
No, I'm gonna, I hear my time to.
So let me ask my question about that. My other one would be, I don't know if the direct questions are gonna carry on, but on the alternative funding sources, have those been looked into?
So I have a full statement that I would like to make,
Okay,
so that I create context for where we are today. And also, respecting the new board member, I would like to give some historical perspective on the development of this process. So if you allow me.
I was okay.
If there's any. Any hesitation that we, okay.
Does Dr. Dan have any?
Yes, Camila, would you like to?
Thank you.
Give the
proceed?
presentation.
So I want to thank you all for the opportunity of being here and thanking the staff and the manager for the rigor and thoughtfulness reflected on the analysis that was presented to you. The new this partnership, we view the Desert Healthcare District as a strategic partner in workforce development, not simply as a funder. Our goal today is really straightforward and is to affirm areas where we are fully aligned with the staff. To clarify a few points where assumptions might not fully reflect how graduate medical education actually functions, and to share how this program has materially strengthened and changed since we started this conversation. This is a story of progress, leverage, and reduced reliance on Desert Healthcare District dollars, not increased risk for the district. So the context for the new board members and a refresher for all of us, Desert Healthcare District current strategic plan identifies access to healthcare as the #1 priority. And that was identified by the community through data and through input. The plan specifically recognizes supporting residency programs as a proven strategy to increase the local supply of primary care physicians. The magnitude of this need was well documented by Huron when they reported that the gap that exists in primary care providers for the Coachella Valley is about 200. Even with all the output and the residency programs that exist, we have 2 residency programs in the valley that are capped. One is Desert Regional Medical Center and the other is Eisenhower. So in direct response to that need, InnerCare has been deliberately developing this community-based, community-led residency model in partnership with PAP Health and other local providers. Some historical milestone in January of 2025, InnerCare launched the Eastern Riverside and Imperial County Collaborative for Medical Education, inviting the district to participate as a thought leader and a strategic partner. In February of 2025, we submitted a planning and development grant to the Desert Healthcare District to support the creation of this first community-based residency program in the Coachella Valley, led by InnerCare. In May 2025, InnerCare achieved a major milestone, which is receiving the sponsoring institution accreditation by the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education. That accreditation reflects not a plan on paper, but a real functioning GME infrastructure, one that positions the program to launch sustainability and long-term workforce impact. The path has been challenging. This work has not been easy, and we recognize that the district has a responsibility to exercise strong fiduciary oversight. In April, the board of directors directed staff to engage with existing community-based residency development efforts. To date, the only community-led effort underway is this one partnership between the AP Health and InnerCare. Since then, the review process has been thorough and rigorous. At times, however, it has felt more as an evaluation exercise than a collaboration, which we believe was not the board intent. We have also heard concerns expressed about potential program risks. We welcome those questions and we have proactively addressed them by proposing a milestone-based reimbursement structure for the program, under which the district funds will only be released after measurable progress is achieved, eliminating financial risks for the district. That approach ensures accountability, protects the district resources, and aligns with best practices in workforce development. We're here today in good faith with one shared objective: to find common ground, align on facts, and agree on a path forward that serves the long-term health of our community. So where we are fully aligned, I think, is staff, Jermaine. They acknowledge that the residency programs equal high-value workforce investment. And as Jermaine said, this is a very beneficial driver for Desert Healthcare District to improve access to care. Residency programs are the single most reliable way to grow and retain physicians locally. Physicians overwhelmingly practice in the places or around the places where they are trained. These advances directly Desert Healthcare District access to care and equity priority, especially because of where we are placing those residents. Milestone-based funding is the right approach. We believe that, and it was our original proposal that we still supported. We welcome clear milestone, accountability, ongoing reporting of complementary funding sources, because we have obtained some of those, and we will continue to obtain more, which will be beneficial for the district. And this is about shared stewardship, not a blank check that we're asking you for. Additionally, I think we agree on leveraging multiple funding streams, and that is essential. No residency program, hospital-based or teaching health center, survives on one single source of funding. And Desert Healthcare District plays a catalytic role in helping programs reach the point where federal and state dollars can be leveraged. Now, there are areas that we believe require more clarity. And I want to acknowledge that Jermaine said that the jurisdiction restrictions are not their recommendation. So those are recommendations from staff, I believe. Residency value is based on where the program is anchored. And this program is anchored in the Coachella Valley. Whether the residents need to go outside of the district for residency training, and I'll give you one example that was also mentioned by Jermaine. In PGY2, in the second year of residency training, the residents require 2 blocks, 4 weeks is each block, of children's hospital training. They need inpatient training, they need emergency room training. The only place we don't have that training available in the district, we have to go to Loma Linda. We have to finalize a negotiation with Loma Linda, and our residents will go to Loma Linda. So something important is that there is no district policy, no state statute, and no national DME precedent that requires 100% of the training to occur within a funded district. So we disagree with that formula, that we should be looking at exactly what percentage of the FTEs are going to be based within the Coachella Valley or that type. That really doesn't make any sense, because residents are not itinerant trainees, they are district and or workforce assets. The other point that we have disagreements with is that Medicare funding via Eisenhower is going to offset the costs of this program. Staff report references Medicare, direct value medical education and indirect value medical education funding from CMS, which does not apply here because Eisenhower Medical Center is capped. You said it's 125. I don't know exactly what their cap is, but I know for a fact that they are functioning beyond their cap. Any suggestion that Medicare revenue at Eisenhower offsets inner care cost is speculative and not supported by CMS policy. So next point is that early phase faculty time is not necessary and the district shouldn't be funding that. I think that early faculty and leadership efforts in teaching health center models include expanding clinical capacity, preparing residents, ready clinics, faculty development, and curriculum design. Why this is important is because faculty development is required by ACDME. So it's not that it's nice to have it, it's a requirement that ACDME will measure our program development process. So also these activities increase basic capacity to quality of care for the district resident. This is not an administrative overhead. It is access expansion and accreditation credits happening at the same time. Now, here's the update and things that have changed since we first submitted that proposal in February of 2025. At that time, we had limited resources. We were in very early stages of infrastructure development. We were a significant startup risk, which is typical for any DME program, but things have changed. We hired a program director that was the major delay, and as we are part of the HRSA cohort, we're learning that almost all FQHC base, and especially in rural areas, finding a program director is like finding a needle in a haystack. It's very difficult, very challenging to recruit, and we have been lucky that we found not only one, we found two. So we have one interim program director, which is Dr. Clara Padron-Spence. She's online. And we have a permanent program director that is joining in our care in the next 3 weeks. So we also secured $750,000 from HRSA. So HRSA is supporting this grant, and it's supporting an expansion of this program from 6 residents to 8 residents per year. So instead of being an 18 resident program, it's going to be a 24 resident program. We also secured $2 million from HGI. So the state of California is, in essence, saying, yes, this is a good program. And they do have their due diligence as well. We got ACDME sponsoring institution accreditation. We have expanded administrative and faculty capacity. We have an institutional coordinator sitting next to me. And we, as I said, we're growing the program from 6 to 8 residents per year, including a rural tract that is going to have 2 residents based in Mecca. This is unprecedented. The financial bottom line, we estimate that a 3-year program will cost approximately, give or take, $11 million. Inner Care has secured and is committed to support this program with $8 million. So that results in a reduced reliance on Desert Healthcare District funding, stronger sustainability profile, and clear leverage of district dollars. So we welcome these revisions, and I think we would love to submit a revised proposal for up to $3 million if that is something that the district approves today. But why does the Desert Healthcare District role still matters? Even with diversified funding, your support provides local validation of a community-led workforce strategy. It provides stability, especially amid the uncertainty of what is happening with the federal government. There is no funding for teaching health centers DME, programs that have been funded in the past. has no funding whatsoever from the federal government as of today. We see the mess that Washington DC is these days. So it also provides assurances that the resident position can be sustained long term. And it's a very strong signal to other funders that this program has local commitments, local support. So we're not asking you to fill in the gaps, we're saying that this is an anchoring system for what the Desert Healthcare District can do today. So in closing, we respectfully ask that the program be evaluated as a district anchor workforce asset built on a national graduate medical education best practice and aligned with realistic federal and state EME funding rules. We believe there is clear alignment, and I think this is exactly the kind of long-term leverage investment that doesn't just fund the program, it changes the region, health care future. We stand ready to move forward together with accountability, partnership, and shared commitment to improving access to care for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. All righty, board, any?
Before we ask questions, may I continue on his presentation? Of course. So I would just like to kind of predicate some of the timeline. So Dr. Barzaga started the timeline.
Just for clarification, can you introduce yourself?
So sorry, you guys.
I know, we know you, but still.
I'm Dr. Carmela Meyer. I am a GME consultant. I've been working in the field for over 30 years. I've stood up several hundreds of programs, both sponsored institutions and programs in multiple specialties, including family medicine. I also have written well over $50 million worth of grants and have received them. So I'm very experienced in the grant part of this, which you don't get into GME unless you do grants, because that's how it gets funded. I also have a lot of experience. I've been a DIO at multiple medical centers, and I've also been an associate program director, which focuses primarily on curriculum. So that's kind of what I bring to the table. I've been working with Dr. Barzaga for 2 years now, and with this board for 2 years. So while the request for this grant dollars was submitted in February of 2025, I'd like to take the board back to this actually started a year prior to that, where we actually presented to the board the idea of moving this project forward at that time. And it was met with a lot of administrative barriers and we did not continue. And that is when InterCare took it on as a primary initiative and has moved forward in that regard. So just to set the stage that it really did start before the submission of this grant. I've been working here for 2 years, so I feel like I know this program backwards and forwards. I've seen it from its infancy. I've told you my background's quite extensive in GME and grants. I will say, and I do not mean this with all due respect, I'll just say that. I've never seen such administrative obstruction in a grant process. And it's kind of upsetting to me because I really do feel strongly and am committed to this program. I do not believe that that is the board's intention. To make a comment that information was withheld is not accurate. We have provided information that we've been asked for, and we've provided it as timely as we can, given the fact that we are dealing with stringent deadlines, as Jermaine has mentioned, trying to meet ACGME requirements. All the information that has been requested, you saw on your screen. Much of that information was presented to Jermaine from InterCare. So I'm not quite sure where the being withheld is coming from. There are times when they may feel that information is not forthcoming. Information that has been given has been misrepresented and miscommunicated to this board. And therefore, it's not being withheld on InterCare side. I will also kind of like to address, as long as with Dr. Barzaga, the parts about the percentage of time and being anchored in this area. What happens in the federal government level is there's a rural residency rural development grant. And you receive dollars from the federal government for rural sites and rural programs. And they only require 51% to be at this rural area. So they understand, the federal government understands that no family medicine program, especially, can be contained in one solid area. It's impossible because of some of the experiences that are required, like the pediatric inpatients, pediatric ER. There are also lots of experiences in inpatient service that we have to work with other facilities to accommodate, because Intercare in and of itself does not have those. And so in order to meet ACGME requirements, you have to go outside of your own course. But I will say, even when you do, there is still time. It's not a perfect 1.0. So even when they go to Loma Linda, they will be coming back to this region for their continuity clinic. They'll be coming back for their education half day. So it's not a full 1.0 that is outside of the region either. Continuity clinic is typically where your primary base is. That's where your resident's home is. They do a progressive continuity clinic. They start with 1 half day, kind of get the residents' feet wet in their first year. Moving into their second and third year, adding a half a day, where eventually they're either at a 3 or 4 half day each week clinic. So they really do become part of that clinic, which is why it is such a great recruitment tool. They become part of your community and they become part of your practices. And that makes it very easy for them to make the decision, this is where they want to stay. And the more experiences like that that we can give them, the better we are. Also, faculty development doesn't just happen with physician faculty. Intercare and several of the areas like DAP doesn't have a lot of experience with GME and how GME is run. We don't need to just teach our faculty how to be faculty, but we need to teach nursing how to work with residents. We need to teach clerical staff that maybe it's not a 10-minute visit, it's a 15 or 20-minute visit. So they have to be trained. There's a lot of education that has to happen to get the system ready for GME. It's not just the physician.
Anybody else from our team?
I do want to make one clarification about information that is presented as being withheld. At the time that we were being asked to provide a block diagram with specific sites where the residency rotations are going to happen, we could not provide that because, as I just mentioned, it was yesterday that we finalized the negotiation with Loma Linda Children's Hospital. I couldn't say back in November, we're going to have a rotation with Loma Linda Children's Hospital when we're negotiating too with Raleigh Children's Hospital, because we don't know where we're going to find a place to send our residents. The same thing happens for hospitals. The same thing happens for family planning. So it was last week that we finalized negotiation with Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest so that our residents can rotate at Planned Parenthood as well. So those are things that were asked in a very premature way, and we could not provide that level of detail. And even as we are also today securing all those sites, we are in the final stages of developing our curriculum. So it's constantly changing, where we're going to send the residents for one rotation or another. So that's the clarification I wanted to make about that.
Thank you for that. Alrighty, so I'll open it up for discussion.
We're going to continue on that side.
Yeah.
May I make one comment, please? I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you, Colorado, for making that statement, because it was a little bit inaccurate from what was said before. Because that's the reason, if we look at the schedule that shows the acute care or the acute hospitals is 0 is because we didn't have that information. And that's what I was saying, that we did not receive all the information that we requested. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't premature. I don't disagree with that. But I do want to set the record straight that it wasn't inappropriate per Ms. Carmela's comment that it was inappropriate that we didn't receive the information that we asked for. So I just wanted to set that record straight, and thank you, Conrado, for helping that be clarified.
Thank you. Any questions?
I mean, if it's part of a professional non-disclosure.
Can you introduce yourself as well?
I am Dr. Alan Wood, Chief Medical Officer for Inner Care. If it's part of a non-disclosure agreement process, a professional non-disclosure agreement process, it's nobody's fault here. You're both right. Yeah, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think the question that was asked earlier was about Eisenhower specifically, which we still haven't received any communication from Intercare what that relationship is. So
You have the affiliation agreement. That's the one that serves.
it's not
We
an
actually,
executed agreement.
we don't have one.
That's what I mean. I'll let legal counsel.
It is the template that legal counsel told us to use, but they have not signed it.
And if I remember correctly, you mentioned that that was fine. And it
Yeah.
was his preference that it was.
Yeah, I mean, I
That it
like
was
to,
signed.
But that we may need to
It's signed, right.
I like, look, we look forward to. And, you know, we have Jermaine has been very helpful. And they're really good at this stuff. And I think that between us all, we'll be able to work through each of these efforts. And I think it's important that we're sort of focusing on what we agree. And, you know, in your memo, you set out, we're pretty much in agreement. There's only 2 issues that there's a little clarification that we're gonna need to get. And the first area is this jurisdictional thing. And so, you know, I want everybody to understand that this is an issue, the issue of using district funds to support healthcare related programs. You know, for residents or benefiting residents outside the district. This has been going on since I've been here, okay? And so it is a legal issue and it's tied up to, you know, is it a public purpose and does it benefit? The idea is that whatever we're doing, we gotta be able to demonstrate that we're benefiting the residents and the communities that are served by the district by this, okay? And things are not black and white. Okay, let me finish. Sure. And so, but there are serious consequences because if it is found that you're spending public funds inappropriately, it's viewed as a gift of public funds, and it carries with it potential personal liability to the directors. So we just want to be careful about that. We're not trying to be obstructionists or anything like that. And Conrado understands this. We've dealt with this. We just recently dealt with this with the Blythe situation. And I'm confident that we can work through this. We just need to get help us understand it so we can articulate whatever the benefit is for these people to go to Loma Linda or wherever to show how that's going to benefit the residents here. Okay, I understand there's a couple of programs. So there's some things we got to work through on this, but we're phasing this. We're coming back. We're going to look at this grant and come back with a grant that's going to be, we're all going to be in violent agreement on. And so we just need to have that work through these things so that we can do that. And I think because obviously the board has directed it and the staff feels very strongly that this is something that's really a high priority and we want to try to effectuate. So I think if we just take the opportunity to take a deep breath here, just move forward and focus on things we can agree on, we'll get through all of these issues.
Jeff, you had a second point? You said you had 2 points to
Oh,
make.
the other one was just on the Eisenhower issue, because that's a bit complicated. We've got this covenant not to compete, but again, those are things that as we go through this, we're gonna be able to get clarification on it and understanding on it. And you know, we wanna work with you to try to do that. We just need to a cooperative, collegial effort to do that. So,
And can you confirm, will that require an executed affiliation agreement if there is one?
well, I think it would be helpful as we go through these phases, that's all, let's make sure we get it, because we don't wanna create some, we're already in litigation, and we don't wanna create more litigation than necessary, so it's,
That was the agreement, so as soon as it was signed, we would turn it over to me for final review.
Thank you. Harry, questions?
I just had a question.
yeah,
Maybe I misinterpreted the things you said, but are we funding things outside of the district that benefit outside the district?
no, and I'm happy to sort of go off Brian on this, but. So
Well, you mentioned something, I didn't wanna misinterpret what you said, but that's how I interpreted it.
Well, okay, the reality of the world is that when we were a hospital district, the benefits didn't stop at the four walls, okay, of a hospital. We sort of genesed in the nineties, we turned into what they call healthcare districts that represent the whole community. So there's grants that we've done over the years and support to organizations that have spillover benefits to other people that don't happen to live necessarily in the jurisdictional boundaries of the district. But from a legal standpoint, we have to be able to demonstrate that the primary benefit of the public money that's being used for to support organizations is primarily benefiting the residents of the district and the communities that we serve, and that we're not down in Yuma, or we're not down in El Centro or Blythe. We're primarily doing that, and we've done a good job at being able to show that. So these are not, they're not, it's not a black and white issue, but we need to be sensitive. That's all.
Well, and Jeff, at one time, before we expanded past Cook Street,
Yes.
we required all of our grantees, DAP, DAP, Martha's, all of those organizations to actually report the zip codes of the patients they serve.
Yeah, it was very challenging because the valley sort of blends together, and so we were trying to be appropriate, but everything ended at Cook Street. And a lot of the programs and services that the district supported benefited a lot of people because of the needs there that spilled over. And so, in some respects, being able to have the whole Coachella Valley made it a lot easier for the district in that respect. But it's been an issue, Conrado, that I can tell you has been around literally for 35 years. Okay, so and we just want to be careful about it, thoughtful, but I'm confident that those are things we could work through.
When we talk about the women in the hospital, we also need to be realistic that a lot of our residents from the Coachella Valley do go there. And so even if it's not within the service area of the district, there's patients from the Coachella Valley that benefit.
And I'm not saying I disagree, I'm just saying I need to understand what we're talking about and what is that actually gonna be. Because I think there's a pretty good argument that can be made that it primarily benefits the residents of the district.
Well, and
So we wanna be sensitive.
especially when it comes to the PI aspect,
Yeah.
because we don't have the care that one would have.
Those
So,
are,
and even the county RUH system contracts with Fulton Linden nonstop.
yeah,
So because of the specialty areas that we have, especially of the lack of providers and services we have in the valley.
but we're not like a county in the sense we have policing powers.
Right.
All of the things, we're a district of limited. But we only have the basic express or implied powers that you were granted, so we have to be just a little sensitive on, but it's a
Well,
subject.
and I think that's where it comes into the reporting back and the reimbursement side, and staff is really good about that.
Yeah.
When those reports are submitted, is that what is the percentage of the valley that's being benefited? So,
We do just need to be able to articulate that, that's all.
yeah, exactly.
Director Loftus, do you have any?
Well, do you
Other
have
questions?
No, I was good. Okay, great presentation, we've been in our strategic planning. The last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now, 6. That's what a lot of text Chris something earlier, not meetings. I know we talked about residency programs being something that one big part of, so I think this part aligns with that, the fact that we do want to participate in residency programs. We do see the value out here of having them here. We have some here, we're expanding. I think both hospitals we've been expanding. I know they're adding general surgery at Eisenhower because there aren't a whole lot of surgical residencies out here. And so this is great. A lot of our conversation has been around either the legal or the financial aspect, which again, most of that stuff with the right paperwork, you can work around. I think for me, the thing that I'm really focused on, I brought up the first time we met, was just around the success of a residency program is how well those residents can function independently when they leave. And that's that success. If you look at like which residents are successful when they're done, I think there's probably a few things that add into it. One is where they came from, what kind of education did they have, and what that background is, because it's not equal across the board. Okay, they've tested it, they've looked at test scores, they do all that. You can see training. You can also see where people start in training and where they end up in their careers. So we know that where they start is important. So recruiting quality residents and medical students is a critical aspect to the success of a residency. The second part of that is the training volume that they have. Residency is a chance for these residents to learn from other experts, but to begin practicing medicine. And it takes a lot of repetitions to do that. And so I just know from my experience personally, it's a lot of work. And I want to make sure that, you know, as we vet partners to work with, that we know that we can get the case volume that we need. Because again, I don't want to produce, and I've worked with programs in LA that sometimes produce a product that comes out that isn't hireable. Like I trained with fellows that weren't hireable, right? And they kind of broke rule one, they had a great pedigree. And so part of that goes into like, you know, their experience in the training program and how good the training program is to make sure these residents leave successful. So if you bring people through and they can't function at the end of the day, we haven't done a service to them. The other thing is I have, you know, one of the things about these programs is I know Jermaine presented data on it, which was good, but you want to make sure that you always maintain accreditation. You're taking these residents who spent X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt generally, and you're telling them, hey, I can train you to pass your boards, to get a job and to function so that you can, one, you know, take care of yourself, future family or your current family, and relieve the debt there. That's only possible if they're successful. And they're successful in what we produce for them. And so I know Intercare has some residency programs, and as we're vetting partners, you know, for me, the focus has always been on the quality of training that produce. And so you guys have training residents now, right? What's your success rate on board pass, patients passing their boards when they're done?
So we've actually hired probably like about 20% of the residents that have come through. And most, if not all of them, have passed their internal medicine boards within the first attempt. We actually have on staff Dr. Harry Schneid, who passed his boards in the 95th percentile, and is executive vice president of the Osler Institute, which is the nation's oldest board preparation company. And so we hired him on board to also help any resident or faculty that comes in contact with us. That includes any of our colleagues or affiliate institutions that want to receive additional training, help with their boards. So we try to help out any any of our colleagues, for passing their boards, they have access to that as well. And I serve as faculty with them as well for preparation. And we also make sure that our folks that are hired have $2,000 credit CME and 10 days of CME. And we also schedule and block time off so that they can pass their exams as well. Take it very seriously. And then for OBGYN, beat them up as well. Actually do oral board, mock oral boards. All of us within the all of our faculty members, all of our OBGYNs, we're all board certified. And we all do mock orals for our junior. And one of the other criteria as well is we will actually, our interview process will actually, you're right, Dr. Watson. We interrogate into the prologue and also the in-service examinations. General surgery has the in-service exam. Yeah, you can actually see how they do every year. We inquire into that too when we ask program directors how well do they do, get a gauge our idea. You know, are these people going to pass their boards? Can we work with them and make sure that these are individuals that are going to be successful? We want people to be able to come in, be successful board certified physicians, and have a half life out here in the valley.
How many currently active attendings are board certified? Like what percentage are board certified?
I'll have to come back to you on it exactly, but the majority are. I would say, if you were to ask a rough number, I would say probably 7%. The reason being is that we have a very difficult time being able to bill for insurance that we don't. The only people that are not board certified are in the process of pending because IHP has such high standards and requirements for board certified would not be viable.
You have to be board certified to teach residents. It's a requirement.
Yeah.
The other thing I really appreciate your comment about residents being ready the day they get out of residency. And so one of the things I think Dr. Padron Spence is online, but she and I developed a curriculum just last week where the residents, like I was talking about, are going to do the progressive continuity clinic. But in their third year, we've developed a rotation that will mimic what they will see in practice. So rather than seeing 8 patients, 6 to 8 patients in a half day, they will be seeing 10 to 12 patients. So it will get them ready to go out in the real world and not be shocked by what the real world is going to look like for them. They'll also take on more responsibility with practice management, administration, medical records. All of that's going to be part of that rotation. So it's kind of a get ready for the real world rotation.
Thank you for that.
So the remaining 80% that don't stay with Intercare, where do they go? You track that?
Most of the time, when somebody doesn't stay with Intercare, it's usually because of family. Usually it's because their wife's family is somewhere else or their spouse's family is somewhere else.
I also want to clarify, these are residents that belong to another sponsoring institution. So Intercare is the training side for those residents, but Intercare is not the sponsoring institution for those residents. We have developed that capacity now, and this is the first program that is going to be Intercare functioning as the sponsoring institution and as the training side.
So is this your first sponsoring institution?
Yes.
With Intercare?
And come to answer.
No, go ahead, no, please, there's a lot of questions I've had.
Just to follow up on that too, is like, are you anticipating any kind of incentive programs to keep people that go to the residency in the area?
Yes,
And, we have the loan repayment programs, which is a great incentive for those residents. The challenge of recruiting residents is that they tend to stay where they train. So because we're not training them, we see the ones that we train in the OBGYN department, they stay. When we have an opening, they stay. So that's the plan with the family medicine, is that we're going to create not only the training ground, but also that they will develop the community relationships. Because we are a fabric, so, and we have to weave them into the fabric of our community and welcome them here and make them feel that they belong here so that they can stay. And we have those incentives, the loan repayment programs. Also, a great addition is having InnerCare as a sponsoring institution, because that creates a new layer of attraction for a physician that wants to be a faculty, that wants to teach, that wants to have that as part of his pedigree.
Yeah, so outside of that, so I think InnerCare's been open since like 1970. Why now are you becoming a sponsoring institution? It's been 55 years, like, I wanna hear, like, why are you doing it now?
Well,
I just wanna know, because I love that we're working, I mean, you see the need here. But I really wanna hear, like, why now? It's been, 55 years.
Thank you, but the reality is that sponsoring institutions were historically based in academic medical centers and hospitals. There was no community-based residency programs because they were not allowed by law. The Affordable Care Act included the provisions that federally qualified health centers could become teaching health centers, and that's very recent that the teaching health center movement has commenced. So here in California, there is only a handful, I believe there are 10 FQHCs only that have a teaching health center designation. So we're joining that group.
And just like in context of that, about 6 years, 7 years ago, InnerCare we hired a consultant to look into this idea of a residency program. And so at the time, based on that, we realized that we didn't have the capacity to do that.
Can you elaborate on that? What capacity did you have?
All of the people in place to help you.
Oh,
And also some of the funding and, that kind of it, so we postponed it and focused on different initiatives. But it has been in our minds for a while until Conrado became available and some other things and some other factors with the InnerCare became available. Then we went full force. And we have stopped since then.
Thank you. Director Rogers, you have a question?
Yeah, I have two questions. Question number one is that we've heard from Jermaine's solution for Jermaine Laughlin in terms of how they looked at the grant and made some suggestions. I've heard that we're still waiting for some information from InnerCare. My question is what do we need in order for this to pass muster that the board can look positively at?
Yeah, thank you. We have learned more information in the last 2 or 3 days, as well as even brand new information tonight. And I think we are at a point where we can work together, as I suggested earlier, that we can work together with staff, Jermaine and InnerCare to produce a revised grant application in, say, the $3 million range, because we just learned that literally in the last 2 days. And so I believe that can be done and be able to bring back that revised application, at a reasonable later date at this point, because even, and as, legal counsel has indicated that we would then ensure that we have, that we're in compliance with our lease agreement, et cetera. So I think that's where we're at, and I think we're not far off.
So we just need to settle the jurisdiction question and the non-compete question. So my next question is it, this is a multi-year grant process. Is it possible for the district to fund year one, and look at the milestones and then move on to a second application for year two? So that we can, walk the walk with InterCare?
Right, and then that also fits in with what our current grant budget is. Because then we could consider funding, say, the first year component with our current grant budget. And then look at that second year or, the multiple years as we then come out of our strategic planning as well. So, I mean, I think it's I think we're right there. I think it's very doable to make this happen at this point. And, just to, from the support of the staff, we've always been about the program is good. There's been no doubt in our mind with that. We just want to ensure that from, a fiscal stewardship and also the program stewardship of it and supporting the directors with information and expertise that comes from Germain Solutions as the experts in this field, that we come to an agreeable solution with it. And I think we're very close to that at this point.
Director.
Yeah, just clarification, Conrado, is that it seems like you're comfortable with the phased-in approach and a revised budget. And then secondly, if the grant was done by the time of paying residents, we're paying InterCare for those residents, not Eisenhower, correct?
That's correct.
So see, that's where I think we get over the conflict of interest. That's just my opinion. And I'm not a lawyer, but and then my only final comment would be, we held the first listening session today, and the main pillar is access or building the workforce.
Right.
And I really do think this is the best way to go forward. And again, with the revised approach, but I just think that the infrastructure's been set up. I know the difficulties working in the FQ system in the county on just the crap that's being dealt with us from the federal government, but just the complexity of what healthcare delivery is, and especially in the valley. It's very different than even it is on the western part of the county. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any additional board member comments?
Will we have a proposal to look at?
I was gonna make a suggestion.
I was good, yes.
So I think we're in agreement on this, but listen to me come out. I think we're requesting direction from the board for staff to work with InterCare Germain Solutions to bring back a new grant application with phased milestone-based funding, including leveraging multiple funding sources, which you're doing, aligning with the ACGME time requirements, which we're doing, and clarify the issue of district funding based on the training locations and the issue of the potential financial impact of the grants on the grant from the district on Eisenhower. So that sort of encapsulates everything and what we'd like to come back and, we'll work with you and we've got Germain on board. And I think we can come up with a really good application, if that sounds okay with you.
Absolutely, but we don't need a motion on that, right?
Why don't you give us direction if you just.
I'd like to give a little more direction to
Yeah, okay.
And everything that you stated had nothing to do about the mission of a residency program. Nothing was mentioned about, are you capable of training residents? It's really frustrating to hear about, do we qualify for the lease? Do we have the money? It's not about any of that. All of that is clear. We're starting up a brand new residency. This isn't a gentle venture. I just think we need to make sure, and I had a lot more questions, that you vet the capabilities of the organization. And has no offense to you, this is how I would say to anybody. I tell Eisenhower this too. The capabilities of this program in a startup scenario to legitimately train functional residents. That is topic one. We want to amplify in our mission statement that we've been developing for strategic planning. We're almost getting to the point of getting all the community sessions in, getting the feedback. I wanna make sure that we're amplifying something that's gonna be successful. And again, there's a lot of due diligence during this grant process that, yes, you gotta work through the legal stuff, you're gonna do that, but are you capable of building something that can successfully train a doctor? If it was easy, it would have been done by many programs now, like, and I applaud them for approaching this because it is a big mountain to climb. But for us, we have to make sure that we are supporting an organization that give full confidence that we will be successful, because we could also say, hey, get started, wait a few years, and then be amplified because now we see success, which is typically how we fund. We typically don't fund startups, and I'm okay doing it. I like the idea of funding startups, but it's a different risk profile. That needs to be goal one that we talk about, not whether or not we can jump through legal hurdles. It's whether or not we can be successful.
That's a germane question. And they-
Well, Jermaine doesn't know either because we don't have a track record.
No, but they can advise the board
Just saying.
on the potential success,
But
the
it's,
statistics that we're talking about. So that's
Yeah.
all. I mean, that's, that is,
we've done some of that.
that's a,
And one thing that I do wanna
Yeah.
add, this is the place to ask questions, so I wouldn't want you to leave this room with
Oh, no,
questions.
he answered a bunch and I'll
You
have.
said that you still have some.
I do have a few, but I think coming back. I think to really evaluate it, you have to go look at how it's currently functioning. And the function of the residents that have been produced, like traditionally, you can name probably real famous hospitals where doctors come from because you see what they've produced down the road. And I think that's where I would wanna spend more time looking at that part of what's being produced, and I'm just learning that they haven't sponsored before, which is fine, there's a first time for everything, but we really wanna look at, like I said. Nobody asked about board pass rates, nobody asked about success after residency, there's 80% of people we don't know that aren't being hired. We wanna make sure that, and I'm not saying we don't produce quality, I'm just saying that our due diligence as a board is to really look at that, because that's who's gonna be taking care of your mom, your dad, who wanna recruit and stay. You wanna recruit good physicians to stay out here, and we also wanna produce good physicians, good nurses, good healthcare providers. So we just wanna make sure that who we're partnering with, because we don't have a track record, that we look through it with that lens.
And so I agree with you to
Yeah.
some extent, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know, but a lot of the things that we fund, we just don't know, that's why we
But
have
they do have-
securities in place.
Sure.
In this particular case, it's been agreed that it's gonna be milestone.
Correct.
Reimbursement, so it's not that they're gonna walk away with, at this point, 3 million, it's like, hey, no, you're gonna let us know first if you're being successful, and then we'll.
But we won't
Okay,
know
we-
because the product is 6 years down the road.
But I think, Dan, to your point too, and I agree, and then I would say this.
We do, but we don't not fund things that, so we haven't moved to the startup, everybody we funded, at least since I've been here. Has a track record of success that we know, like, hey, you've been doing the same thing for 10 or 15 years, this isn't a brand new venture. Now, it's not a brand new venture for you, as you've trained residents, but I just wanna make sure that we look, I've given oral boards before, you grill people, you know what it's like, so I wanna make sure we vet every part of it, cause what I want you to produce is something so great that when we say, hey, go in and see these physicians that were trained here. We talk about the InterCure program as something of an elite status, cause that's what I want. When we build a program here, I want it to be elite status, go ahead.
So I think that waiting 6 years is not the function of the district, but there is a precedent. The district funded $5 million to start a new residency program for family medicine when UCR was created. And that was a partnership that the district funded for UCR to start that residency program with Desert Regional Medical Center.
They were a sponsoring institution before.
UCR was not a sponsoring institution.
I think they were brand new sponsoring at that time.
It was a brand new program. It was a brand new.
What year was that? That's very.
So, and that program is still exists,
Well, not with UCR.
not with UCR. but-
We were the
but
sponsoring
then Desert Regional became a sponsoring institution.
That was our first partner.
So why don't you end up transitioning that over?
It's a
It ended up
complicated.
not being a workable partnership, UCR.
Well, it's good.
Like,
And
That's the point, yeah.
if I can finish up too,
Yeah,
and I
I'm sorry.
think part of the board direction is to agree with you, is that I think their care can provide how qualified they are, and some of the success that they've had within that due diligence. I think that's
Exactly what I think,
Pretty much they've been in business for 55 years, so what was the?
since I think like 1970, I don't know the exact year.
yeah, and if I may add to your point, President Barraza, is that if we, and that was part of the concern before, was just, and there's nothing wrong with $5 million ask, but from a perspective of just giving $5 million without having like some phased evaluation. So I think what's being proposed here is kind of a two-phased prong with the milestones component, where if we were to consider funding that first year in what is requested, then we evaluate for that next phase of like the 2+ years. Then I think that potentially gives the board some more confidence and reassurance that as Intercare develops out that first year, builds out that first year, and we're already seeing evidence of that in just the last few months. I mean, they're getting additional funding from Song Brown grants, HRSA, et cetera. And, you know, they at this point have, you know, their program director and additional staffing. Then we can see how that develops going into the matching process a year from now, and seeing how that aligns, if they're getting the, you know, getting the residents as they're anticipating, then I think that gives a stronger support in the directors approving then future funds.
My preference would be having it be just part of one application and then we still don't release the funds instead of, if I'm understanding correctly, having them come back and reapply.
Correct.
That's a different, my understanding is, my preference at 1 of 7 would be, let's approve it, let's let them know that we're in right now, we're kind of in. And then that's also letting our community know, like, we're in. All right, and so it's not that, like, we don't really believe in this, no, we believe in this, but we're putting some securities in place. Rather than having, I mean, it took us, we postponed this meeting, you mentioned the first study session was back in October. You know, and like, are we gonna?
It's been since 1972, like, it's not like it's just a couple months.
And my only point to that, and I'm not opposed to it, but you've approved 3 million for the remainder of this grant year. We approved 3 million that utilizes that 3 million.
And
Okay, thank you.
Even though it's paid out,
even though it's not paid out.
we have to approve the award for whatever is awarded.
Can you do an amendment for year 2?
I'm sorry.
Can you do an amendment for year 2? So
Well,
they-
that's kind of, I think, what we're proposing is like a two-phased.
So it wouldn't be a new application.
It would.
It wouldn't necessarily be a new application, but they would come back for a review, and then we could award then that.
Right,
that second
to not
2 million or whatever
tie up
it
the whole
is.
3 million the first year. That's
Correct,
what I'm-
correct.
One grant. Phased, milestone-based funding. Multiple funding sources, all those kinds of things, but that would be then be able to monitor to see that everything's getting done.
And then be able to release that second phase. It wouldn't be a new application. And I think that we can, for accounting purposes, be able to recognize the funding for that first phase in this fiscal year, if it's approved in this fiscal year, and then award the balance of that in the next fiscal year. And then that's going to align also with our strategic planning and whatever the grant budget, whatever the funding recommendations coming out of our strategic plan. So I think that, you know, facilitates what we're talking about here, and also, you know, supports the program being developed by Intercare.
So just for clarity, we're going to submit a multi-year grant application because the way that this was designed is a 3-year grant application. I don't know how you're going to manage the financial aspect of approving this and that and the other, but the grant application, it doesn't make sense really to submit a proposal that is going to cover the next 5 months and then come back in July with another proposal on how we're going to do another 12 months. So that's our plan, that's how we understand, and that's how we are interpreting it, and we're going to submit a multi-year proposal, and the board is going to analyze it and decide.
It's not a 5-year or a 5-month deal. It's approving then for the first year component and then coming back in a year from now, just to confirm that there's progress. And then we can, as the district, approve that going
If
forward.
we can have staff, when we see this, assuming it's going to go back to the program committee and then board, if we can see those options, if staff can,
Absolutely.
you know, provide those two scenarios, how we would go about, and then we make a decision.
It wouldn't be difficult to revise the existing grant. Just have to change the deliverables and the
In
timeline.
the time.
Dr. Dan had a question.
And is it two things? One, I think it should be, like Conrado said, it needs to be grant the full amount. This isn't a 5-month project. So again, buckle in, because this is a long process. Once you start this and you're a part of it, it's like 3 years is just gonna be getting an intern. You're not, so I think you need to find a longer term if you decide to fund a residency program. The second thing is that one of the things I think I'd like to direct the board to, if I can, and we can prove, is work with Jermaine to get objective and trackable metrics on a success of a residency program. What things do we want to see at certain hurdles? We have to be prepared to approve the additional funding if it's not there, but also withhold it if we can't. And so Jermaine's done this a bunch. I think you've done it a bunch too. So you kind of know what a typical time frame should be for an up and coming sponsoring institution. What residency expectations should we have in terms of, they've got curriculum, but recruiting the residents, obtaining the residents, and like, what are those metrics look like? So go ahead.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine, it's good.
But, okay, so I also understand that there's still agency that's gonna be overseeing the program, so do we want to have them like?
But we're not there yet.
Like,
ACG is not involved yet. They won't be, I mean, they are involved, but they won't be looking at case volumes and things until you have residents. We're looking at from now until they get a residency class. And then you'll start to see case volumes come in through ACGME. You'll start to see, if they have test scores, things like that. But we should think about as a group, because this may just be the start of us looking into sponsoring more, because 8 residents a year isn't nearly enough to fill the gap that we have. But it's an opportunity for the board to really set metrics that we want to use to define what does it mean to support a successful residency program? Because we may have other organizations out there that bring physicians out here that want to do this. We should really spend the time now to put the metrics together so we know yes, this is successful, and yes, it isn't. And you may have metrics across the country of what this looks like. I imagine Jermaine does. From an educational standpoint, again, you have to, this is what I tell all the doctors at the hospital. The residents aren't here to do work. Yes, that's what they do. They're here to learn. So you really have to change the way you're viewing this program. It's an educational program. It's not, oh, hey, let's just get more doctors. No, you are an educational program now, so you have to change the way you think about it. It's so much, it's just bodies in seats, and it's not. Because that body in a seat can't fly the plane, doesn't matter. So you really have to say, I'm in education. So those metrics that we look at, yes, we should have financial metrics that we look at with Intercare, but we should also, they do reported financials, so we're gonna get a good idea what that looks like year over year anyways. But what are these educational metrics that say, yes, we're meeting those goals, right? If you lose a program director, what does that mean for long-term funding? Like, really think through all those scenarios and what are the requirements?
So an alternate to that, since we've awarded or increased the budget by 3 million. If we award the 3 million, and I get it, awarding the whole program in this fiscal year, then the board would need to consider if they're wanting to grant more to
Not there yet.
increase.
I haven't seen a program yet. I wanna see the full.
So I think we need to bring the grant back and work through that process. If it's chosen to be awarded in this fiscal year, then the board would consider then either increasing the grant budget or hold it at that. So
And I think that we would be okay with that decision when it comes to the board.
I just wanna see the full package and then.
With what
we'll worry about-
decision?
yeah, that's really.
Actually, if we would be approving or not the grant.
To raise the money
Well,
No, right.
in our grant budget?
So what I'm saying is that at that point, we would be able to make the decision whether or not, or which route we would be going.
To phase, which as a 1-year grant or a
So
3-year.
they're gonna give us the scenarios and
Okay.
then at that
I got
moment,
it.
we'll make a decision.
Okay.
I mean, I imagine it's gonna take some time to put these metrics together. This isn't a sit around the room and kind of draw some stuff up. We're gonna need to really spend time. Because what you're building here is gonna set precedents for how we become or support other sponsoring institutions. So yeah, if it delays a few months, then fine, you know, I just wanna make sure we get it right. And that we don't just spin up something that we can't monitor.
And we'll have better understanding from the grant backlog or that's in the pipeline now.
Yeah.
And have a better understanding of what we're awarded by whatever it is, whatever the date is that this is reconsidered, say it's April, just as a marker. We'll have a better understanding of what we're bringing.
Well, would have to go to the program committee.
Absolutely.
And that's not 2 weeks.
Exactly, that's not getting late.
For something where we every night, we got to bring that piece.
Did you see the article I sent about?
But
Hoover's
yeah.
Washington?
I'm just.
Chris sent you an email about that.
I think it's very.
He was gonna send it out with his comments.
He said he is.
Oh, yes, yes,
So he.
Just one last question, as this phase process and new proposal comes forward, and based on Jeff's comments, the program initially is funded for startup, and it's determined based on the progression of additional information. It appears that there's violations of the lease covenants. What's the viability of the program without the district's funding?
The program will exist with or without this funding.
That answers that.
Well, it gets split, it gets really fine tuning because there's the vast majority of this is going to the residents, okay?
Right.
I mean, so it's really what part of the grant is necessarily even an issue with
I
us?
think she was asking us, is Intercare gonna do this with or without money from, right?
Yeah.
Us, I mean, they got a large revenue, they have like maybe 113 or 115 million in 24 revenue, so they have that, but I think the bigger question again comes back to. Do we wanna participate in the educating of residents that may stay here in the valley?
Well, and then
That's the question, it's not the money.
That's the
It's not the money, it's how do you see the board participating in a long-term educational platform for residents here and for training physicians? The money's there.
Right, and
Because they're gonna do it otherwise.
a side note to that, though, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that what I'm hearing is that if it is determined that there is a conflict in. Okay, so it's been said that the district is paying for the residents. If we were to learn that there was funding coming from Eisenhower to also offset or support the funding for the residents. And that's a potential conflict to the lease agreement, what does that do? And that's what we're trying to establish.
I believe it's conflict, actually.
And I was gonna say, I don't think that would be.
Payment of the.
Yeah.
Money coming out of us, not.
Yeah.
Teaching.
Right.
That's the money.
That would be it. Like,
More of an
of
indirect. Right, direct correlation.
Right.
We're doing way too many tests.
And we're-
Yeah, and then there's also other materials within the grant application, the grantees have to report, and we have, Live to Rise reporting to us, what, quarterly, or what are they? I know that like CVAC would also come and report to the board, when we gave them 10 million for the CBD. Previous past board, so I mean, I trust that staff will be able to, keep track of that and make sure that was gonna be.
Coming and reporting things, I mean, you're gonna be a partner with them.
So any last board member comments? Yes.
I just want to say thank you to our team for taking a really hard look. And I know that the applicant was not entirely happy with how it will progress. But at the end of the day, it's going to actually make the process
Yes.
better. Okay, having had that many questions and barriers, that it will be something that we could say that we have looked at every angle from our experts of Jermaine, from our legal, from our team, our fiscal. It has been a lot. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. And it's not gonna be myself or one individual board member that's going to be leading this. It's gonna be our staff. That's what they get paid for. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Just for me, I know that we've been working on this grant, and it was mentioned, for a year already. And so I'd like to see if maybe we could bring it to the program committee, for the next month's meeting, so March, if at all possible, if we, and then give it, make an addition, right?
Just from, is there, may I ask the question from a timing standpoint, is it critical to have that rush for intercare? Or is it okay to allow staff to do our normal due diligence process with it? Because there still is some work to be done on this.
What more?
So I know that there's a,
Will you have your application to us?
I don't have an application to you in 2 weeks.
Okay,
That's.
I'm just saying from the standpoint of the volume of work that we have going on right now.
Yeah, we take some of this offline, I think.
We have literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Take it offline.
and that's all well and good. I just don't want to set the staff up for rushing a project to bring to the board. If we can for February or for March, we will. But as the directors all understand, we've got a lot going on this month.
I think we have a lot of things going on. Like he said, we have a lot of things going on this month. We have a lot of meetings this month. We can't expect them to do something that they don't have time for. Or to bring it back next month.
So I trust
think
that,
there is
so I
time.
trust the staff will be able to work on it and, I understand if it's not possible, but I'm just trying to be objective. And like how we move forward, because like I mentioned, it took us, 3-4 months to schedule from one study session to the other. So I mean, I'm not saying that there's a rush to fund, but as a board, like we've had this item for a whole year. And that's also a reflection, right?
It's a
On
big
the
project,
district,
though.
on the district side, so. Sort of my comment. See no other.
And I actually do have this, and it's not on this topic. But so we held the first listening session today for the strategic plan. I want to thank staff, Alejandro especially for helping facilitate. So did an amazing job on the presentation. Really, really great turnout, a lot of big community partners. What I would encourage my fellow directors is that, and again, Letty, Kimberly. What's your name again? Thank you, Carol, who all showed up today, but I think it's important that as some of the questions that come up is that we talk about what the district is doing in some things, because there was things that came up and questions that we're already doing some of that. So I think it's important as directors not to overtake the conversation. I tried not to do that today, but to at least provide some clarification. That's great. So that's a good thing.
Thank you for those comments. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 5:53. Thank you, everyone.